If my husband wants to marry another Muslim woman and asks about my permission, should I give him? And if yes, then why should I? In which situations can a man marry again? Firstly, let me tell you, generally, it's not required for a Muslim man to take the permission of his first wife in order to marry a second wife. Allah says in the Quran in Surah Nisa chapter 4 verse number 3, marry women of a choice in 2s, 3s or 4s, but if you can't do justice, marry only one. And you can hear my answer on polygamy, why I said that. Now coming to your question, number one, permission is not required. Number two, when can a Muslim man marry again? There is no specified reason that when can he marry. Whenever he wishes, he can marry. There is no rule that only if this thing happens, he can take a second wife or marry again. But there are logical reasons why second marriage should be allowed, and I've given that in my answers. That maybe from the first wife, he doesn't have children and he wants children. So instead of divorcing the first wife and then marrying a new wife, Islam gives permission, he can keep his first wife and marry a second wife, one of the reasons. Second can be that maybe the wife, the first wife, has some medical problem where she cannot satisfy the husband sexually. So instead of divorcing her and marrying another woman, he can keep the first wife and take a second wife. These are some of the logical reasons why a person can marry. But let me tell you, this reason that people marry is a very small percentage. Those who take a second wife, the percentage that marry because they have no children or because the wife cannot satisfy, maybe less than 1%. I'm just being very frank with you. Most of the people marry thinking, okay, marrying more than one wife would be pleasurable, and they marry. Islam gives permission. But practically, believe me, I have many Muslim friends who have more than one wife. From the Gulf country, from the Indian subcontinent, whether it be India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. What you realize that in the Gulf country, people have a misconception that almost all men have more than one wife. That's wrong. I don't think so. Majority of the men have more than one wife in the Gulf country, whether it be Saudi, whether it be UAE, whether it be Qatar, whether it be Kuwait. I don't think so more than 50%. Yes, but the percentage of Muslim men marrying more than one wife in the Gulf country is much more than the Indian subcontinent or other Muslim country. It's not more than 50%, but it is a substantial percentage. The people in the Indian subcontinent, the Muslim men marrying more than one wife is a negligible percentage. It will surely be in single digits, whether 2%, 3%, 4%, but it will be in single digit. As compared to the Gulf country, it will be multiple times more, but not majority. Now, when you realize that in the Gulf country, it is quite common, though not majority, it's common, so the society accepts a man to have more than one wife. But in the Indian subcontinent, where majority of the Muslims in the world live, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, these three put together, 1/3 of the Muslim Ummah lives in the Indian subcontinent. Here, culturally, it's not accepted. Islamically, it's correct. But culturally, it's not accepted that a man, should have more than one wife. So the percentage of Muslim marrying more than one woman would be 2%, 3%, little bit single digits. So the question is that when we speak with most of these men, even in the Gulf country, they may joke about, they always joke and they tell, okay, why don't you, and it's a common pastime in the Gulf country about polygamy. And even when I go to the Gulf country, most of my Arab friends, they comment, oh, Dr. Zakir, why don't you marry second time? And they joke with me when I joke with them. I tell them, if you see the lifestyle of the Prophet Muhammad did not take a second wife until his first and his best wife, Hazrat Khatija, expired. I've got my best wife, Hazrat Khatija, with me. She's alive. If you don't have the best wife and you want to marry second time, it's your choice. I'm marrying the sunnah of the Prophet. My best wife, she's alive. My first wife is alive. And until the first wife did not die, the Prophet did not take a second wife. So these people tell, oh, it is very difficult to argue with Dr. Zakir and to win an argument with Dr. Zakir. Anyway, what I'm saying is a fact, but It is just to win an argument. It is permissible to marry more than one wife. Some scholars say mustab. I don't agree with that. I say it is mubah. When they want to joke with me, I tell them, this is, the sunnah of the Prophet. And it is a sunnah. No one can argue with me. The Prophet married the first wife, which was, she was elder. Even my wife is elder to me, though by 3 weeks, but she's elder. So I said, I am following more of the sunnah than you. Your first wife is younger than you, and you want to you've taken a second wife, and your first wife is alive. So anyway, this is just battle of wits. But in Islam, it's permitted. But when we really talk with them seriously, you realize that there are various social problems. At the time of the Prophet, where there were wars and men were killed to protect the other women, alhamdulillah. Now the situation is different. Now when you see the population of the men and women is equal, you cannot say approximately if the women are more, it is just 0.5%. In every 1,000 men, you may have 5 women more. So the percentage is less than half. It's not like at the time of the Sahabas in battles, men used to die and there were many women which were left unmarried. So now when we really speak and interview with them, they realize that life is not the same. In Gulf, it is less a problem, but there is a problem even in the Gulf country for those who marry more than one wife. And in the Indian subcontinent, whether it be India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, where the question is from, if you really interview the people who have more than one wife, and you seriously talk to them, majority of them are not happy with their married life. They took a decision thinking it's going to be bed of roses and you'll enjoy, etc. It's not because they don't have children. It's not because that the first wife is not satisfied. They say, okay, it's allowed. And they realize that it is a bigger problem maintaining everything. So let me tell you very frankly that unless there is a real requirement, I would not advise. It's a sunnah, it's permitted. And I've given a lecture on that. I'm not saying that. But unless if there's a requirement, okay, go ahead. But thinking that it's going to be a bed of roses and you're going to have a lot of pleasure. So don't be disillusioned by this. Now coming to your question. I've told you the reason. There's no reason required to get married. But the scientific reasons I've told you. So Islam gives permission. And it's not required for a man to take the permission of the first wife before marrying a second wife unless it is mentioned in the Nikah. Islam gives permission for a woman that when she gets married, she can put some conditions in the marital contract. She cannot force her husband to do something which is haram. She cannot prevent her from doing something which is fard. But marrying more than one wife is more optional. So she put a condition that I will marry you under the condition that you will not take a second wife as long as I'm alive. And if he signs that contract, then he cannot take a second wife. If he takes, he has to take permission. But generally, he does not have to take permission. So regarding the question, he wants to take permission. Question I've answered. The reasons I've told you. You're asking me the question, what should I do? Should I give him permission? Coming to the last question, what should you do? What you should do, sister, is that first you have to try and ask your husband that why does he want to marry a second wife? Maybe there are certain things, maybe your behavior, which if you would change, you would not want a second wife. Maybe there are certain things that he's not being satisfied with the sexual life or otherwise, which if you sit and discuss, the problem will be solved. So number one, you should ask him, what is the reason? And if you can solve the problem, alhamdulillah. If you can't solve the problem, if he says that, no, just, maybe I'm not sad. You're a good wife, but yet I want a second wife. And if he insists, my advice to you would be try your level best to satisfy him, to convince him. But if he insists, then allow him. It's better that he does it knowingly rather than he does it unknowingly. There are people who don't inform their first wife. It's not compulsory to take permission. But I always say that at least inform your first wife that you're marrying a second wife. Otherwise, what you'll do, you tell your wife, I'm going for business and I've gone with the second wife. You come late in the night, okay, at a business meeting, you were there with the other wife. So you may have to lie, you may have to do many sins to hide this. So my advice is that if a man marries a second time, permission is not a fard. If he can take permission, that is the best. But it's not a fard. If not, at least the least he can do is inform the first wife so that his life will be comfortable. He will not have to lie. He will not have to do many sins. There may be little arguments initially, but that's the best. As far as the advice asked by you, what should you do? Should you give him permission? Try and convince him. And if you can satisfy him, that's the best. But if he insists, my advice to you would be not doing something haram. Give him permission. You should be a better wife to him than what you were before. And see to it that you don't make a big issue out of it. It will be lost for both, for you and for him. Let it happen, because otherwise the people will do something haram. He will keep the first wife and do haram outside, which is not good for you and not good for him. You are jeopardizing the Jannah of both of you. So that's the reason my advice to you, be try and convince. If he doesn't get convinced, it doesn't require permission, but allow him, and you try and be a better wife than what you were before, so that you at least go to Jannah by being a good wife, inshallah. Hope that answers the question.